Good day and welcome to SCO BRICS Insight, where we talk about what's really going on in the world of the BRICS. Now today I want to talk about the sheer hypocrisy of the US and its vassal the EU, and how they urge other countries to stop trading with Russia, yet they themselves are buying billions of dollars and euros worth of Russian fertilizers. Now, as you're all aware, the US and the EU have imposed more than 20,000 sanctions on Russia over the past 3 years. Now, one of the main products they've not sanctioned is fertilizer, and this is because of their needs and hypocrisy. They cannot replace Russian fertilizers from other sources, so they have to buy direct. This is at the same time as imposing secondary sanctions on countries still trading with Russia. But hey, when was there ever a politician in the West who was not a lying hypocrite with no moral standards? Now let's just look at the figures in monetary terms. Now the US imported 1.8 billion worth of dollars worth in 2023 and 2.6 billion dollars worth in 2024, while the EU spent 2.5 billion dollars in 2023 and 3.2 billion dollars euros importing on Russia in 2024. From January to November 2024, the supply of fertilizers to the US and to EU from Russia increased to over 4.2 million tonnes. That was the US taking 1.8 million tonnes and the EU 2.4 million tonnes. This increase is attributed to the higher cost of gas, which has led EU chemical companies to suspend their own production. And in the US, it's because the gas to produce the fertilizer is actually in the wrong place, as there's not the required pipelines in place to move the gas around the US. Plus, the Jones Act stops the shipping of LNG from Texas or Louisiana. The Jones Act stipulates that all American goods must be transported between American ports and carried in American-owned ships. And given that the US doesn't actually own any LNG tankers, it cannot ship LNG between different ports in the USA. Yeah, really. Now this is unlike Europe, which is crisscrossed with gas delivery pipelines that were built to distribute gas around Europe after the start of Russian gas supplies during the heady days of the Soviet Union back in the 1970s. Now before I continue, I'd like to make an appeal. If you like and enjoy my videos, you can help me fund the channel and my website scobricsinsight.com to further develop it. You can do this by making a small donation, which is done by clicking on the thanks button at the bottom of the video screen. Everybody who donates does get a personal thank you from me. Now, natural gas, as you're all aware, is a major ingredient of nitrogen fertilizers, and since Poland stopped the Yamal-Europe pipeline, the US blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, and the EU decided to stop buying Russian pipeline gas via the Ukraine. It's been ruinously unprofitable to make fertilizers in Europe. Almost every company in Europe has given them up. In fact, most chemical companies are now relocating to countries in either Asia or USA, where gas is much cheaper. Now let's look into the reasons behind the increase in exports and how long is this trend going to continue. Plus, which fertilizers does Russia export? Well, it covers the whole spectrum. Nitrogen fertilizers dominate the structure of European purchases, accounting for 57% of the total, and the demand growth was up 39%, or 1.1 million tonnes in the first 11 months of 2024. Now, the countries that have purchased the most Russian nitrogen fertilizer are Poland 25% share, France 12%, Germany 11%, and Italy 10%. However, the strategy director at Finam Investment, Yaroslav Kabakov, he stated that the primary increase was actually in potash and complex fertilizers. According to his analysis, potash fertilizer supplies increased fourfold in 2024 and reached over 300,000 tonnes. The exports of complex plant nutrition reached 619,000 tonnes. The European Statistics Agency attributes the fact that the high gas costs have compelled the EU chemical companies to discontinue their in-house production, and this has led to significant increases in the cost price of fertilizer, that such fertilizer businesses have become unprofitable. Now, despite the logistics cost, importing Russian nutrients is far more cost effective for European agricultural producers than producing their own. How much fertilizer does the EU import? Well, over the past 5 years, EU countries have accounted for approximately 20% of global fertiliser imports. However, in 2023 there was a significant reduction in both global and EU imports in value. In 2022 there was a very sharp increase in fertiliser prices, and this according to Alexander Danitzev, who's Director of Institute of Trade Policy at the National Research University of the Higher School of Economics. It's contribute to higher import statistics to a lower 2023 base. Now, he's identified several key factors contributing to the growth in Russian fertiliser exports to the EU during the initial months of 2024. First, it's the absence of anti-Russian sanctions on the fertiliser trade has facilitated unimpeded supplies heading to the EU. Secondly, the competitive nature of Russian fertilisers on the global market, which is attributable to their lower production costs, has played a significant role. Finally, the sustained high demand for European agricultural producers has maintained a robust demand for Russian fertilisers. Now, a review of the global fertiliser exports reveals that Russia's long-standing role in the market. I mean, over the last 5 years, Russia's accounted for almost 15% of the global market, and in 2023, despite reduced supplies from key players like Canada, Morocco, the US and China, exceeded 16%. I mean, from 2018 to 2021, Russia's share of fertiliser imports to the EU was about 13%. In 2022-23, the supplies continued and they decreased to around 8 to 9%, according to data from the Higher School of Economics Institute of Trade Policy. Consequently, it's shown that it's not feasible to entirely substitute Russia as a fertiliser supplier on the European market. Now, the other major suppliers from among third-party countries are Egypt and Morocco, but they provide less than 11% of the European countries' imports, according to Danitsev's data. I mean, in the first quarter of 2024, Russian mineral fertiliser producers produced 15.9 million tonnes of product, which is 13% more than 2023. The production of nitrogen fertiliser was up by 2.5% to 7.5 million tonnes, phosphorus fertilisers by 14.7 to 155,000 tonnes, and potash fertilisers by 74% up to 4.1 million tonnes. Now, the ammonia, a raw material for fertiliser, increased by 5% to 4.6 million tonnes, and conversely, the production of complex fertilisers decreased by 2.3%. Now, when viewed in the context of these general results, the group of potash fertilisers is particularly noteworthy, according to Katerina Koroseva, who's a managing partner of the analytical group VMT Consult. High growth rates are attributed to the low base effect. However, these rates are encouraging and we anticipate the growth to reach the pre-crisis level, she said. Now, according to Russian railways, 8.2 million tonnes of fertiliser were shipped in the first quarter of 2024. Now, this represents a 25% increase to the same period, and a similar amount, 8.9 million tonnes, was distributed across the domestic market. The Association of Seaports reported that 10.2 million tonnes were shipped abroad by sea. So the Ministry of Trade anticipates that Russian producers will produce 60 million tonnes of fertiliser in 2024, with more than half of that amount, 35 million tonnes, destined for international markets. And these are considered modest estimates. Now, according to VMT Consult, at the current production rate, this figure could easily rise to 64 to 65 million tonnes. However, geopolitical pressure, rather market forces, are going to be the determining factor in export volumes. I mean, let's remember the European Union often takes restrictive measures against Russia to the detriment of its own members. The decision on gas, for example, is likely to be counterproductive, and the issue of fertiliser is just a minor detail. I mean, let's remember the fifth EU sanctions package therefore included a rejection of Russian fertiliser, but these restrictions were lifted short months later after a number of vague formulations were changed. Now, The market outlook now is actually going to largely depend on price fluctuations, which have fallen significantly after the rise in 2022, but still remain above the average pre-pandemic levels. Now, Danitsev has said that the primary factor is influencing raw material prices, and that's for the production of nitrogen fertiliser, particularly gas. So forecasts for the end of the year remain positive. I mean, Russia's got cheap gas, and it continued to total supplies abroad reaching probably up to 40 million tonnes, which is 10% higher than the 2023 figure. So despite all the rhetoric about not funding Russia's war machine, the US and the EU continue to buy Russian fertilizers and will continue to do that for the foreseeable future. Now, thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe. And if you want to help me out, click on the thanks button at the bottom of the screen and make a donation. See you all again soon.